Good morning to all and welcome to the session, the Hindu Editorial Analysis for Proficiency in English. Today's editorial is all about the problems of pilots, and the major problem of pilots is a fatigue. It's all about the problem fatigue related to pilots, and based on this editorial, we have three parties. One, the Aviation Authority, second, pilots, third, aviation experts. Any editorial related to the problems of a particular group, you have to think of the framework. It may start with the rules, new rules in this context, addressing the problems of the pilots, whether they have been implemented or not, if not, why, reasons behind, and why should they be implemented. This is a broad framework. Let us start the session with the question, what is this editorial about? This editorial is about the efforts of the Directorate General of Civil Aviation, DGCA, in India to introduce changes. Efforts of a particular body. What is that body? DGCA. Efforts towards what? Introduce changes to flight duty time limitations, FDTL. Why should they introduce changes to flight duty time limitations? What is the purpose? What is the objective? In order to address issues of fatigue among pilots. In a nutshell, it is about the initiative taken by the DGCA to address the problems of the pilots, the major problem being fatigue, and it is related to that. What are the implications and what are the reasons for not being implemented? What is the tone of the editorial? The tone of the editorial is a critical and concerned. Critical, criticizing, and concerned. The safety of pilots very important. If they are not safe, the passengers are not safe. Based on that concern. How does it start? Flight from fatigue. Here there is one important word, flight. Because this editorial is about flight, aviation industry, pilots, you may think here flight means a plane or in flight, flying. But here flight has a different meaning altogether. You have to know a particular mechanism, fight or flight mechanism. This is used by zoologists. Zoologist, a person who studies animals, scientist. When we take the animal world, they have a choice when they face a danger. What is that choice? Either fight or flight. Flight means escape. Only the big cats, lion, tiger, puma, cheetah, leopard, these big cats take the first one, fight mechanism. They face a danger, they try to fight. Including man, snakes, all other animals take flight mechanism. Flight means what? Escape. In this context, flight means what? Escape. Escape from what? Escape from the problem of fatigue. Then comes the question, what is the meaning of the word fatigue? Fatigue means to get tired a lot, to get exhausted. Imagine you work continuously for a long time. What is the impact of that? You get exhausted. Fatigue. On the DGCA and flight duty time limitation norms, there is a particular body, lack of energy or weakness. Anil, good. If you take any industry, in this context, aviation industry, any industry has a regulating authority. What is a regulating body or authority in this context? DGCA. On the DGCA and flight duty time limitation norms, there is one word here, norms. Norms, here fatigue, noun, extreme tiredness, norms, noun, something that is usual, typical or standard. We can take the word standards, norms, standards. But the first line talks about The stimulus. Every editorial, every newspaper comes up with an editorial based on a particular incident, a particular policy, a particular report. Yesterday it was about a report. Today it is about the policy, rules and regulations. That is a stimulus. The next line talks about the main idea of the editorial. What is the main idea of this editorial? You see here. The DGCA must. Already we have got many a time. The helping verb must has two functions. One, it is used to express an obligation imposed by the speaker, or it is used to express a personal obligation. Here, obligation imposed by the editor or the writer. Must ensure, make sure, they should make sure something happens. Make sure what? Regulatory norms, regulatory standards brought out by the DGCA are enforced. Enforce, here one fatigue I have read out, norms I have read out. When we go to the next one, we see meanings of these. Norms, enforce. Enforce means to force someone to comply with something. To compel or force someone to comply with something. Enforce for safety. In a nutshell, the main idea that DGCA must ensure regulatory norms are enforced for safety. They should make sure the regulatory standards are enforced, implemented for safety. Excuse me, why? For safety. Whose safety? Pilot safety and the safety of the passengers, obviously. How does it start? The move by the Directorate General of Civil Aviation in January this year to introduce changes to flight duty time limitations would have been a much needed regulatory step towards a step to address. Incomplete sentence, but here it talks about the initiative. Here the move means initiative. The initiative or the move by which organization, which body, the Directorate General of Civil Aviation, when in January this year. And what is this initiative? To introduce, they wanted to introduce, they took an initiative to introduce changes. Changes to what? To flight duty time limitations, and would have been a much needed regulatory step to address, to deal with. There's one important expression here, that's why I had to split the sentence. Would have been. There's an important pattern you have to know. First, you have to know conditional sentences. In English, broadly, we have three types of conditionals. One is present conditionals. There are two in number, open and hypothetical. Past conditional, zero conditional. This pattern goes with past conditional. Any conditional, we have two clauses. The main clause, the if clause. When you take past conditional, the main clause is would plus have plus verb, past participle form. Would plus have plus verb. Verb which form? Past participle form. Past conditional. Actually here, if clause is missing. Past conditional, if clause we use past perfect tense, and main clause we use this pattern. Would have been a much needed regulatory step. Because the norms, the rules introduced by the DGCA, because they were not implemented. Had they been implemented, they would have been a much needed it would have been a much needed regulatory step to address a particular problem. What is the problem? To address the industry issue of fatigue in a professional and scientific manner. Had it been implemented, it would have been the required necessary step to deal with, to address the industry issue of fatigue in a professional and scientific manner. In a professional and scientific manner, that is one thing. Or manage what crew call the burden of the red eye flight. Industry point of view, professional and scientific manner of dealing with a particular industry issue, that is fatigue. From the crew point of view, here crew means the pilot, the cabin crew, manage what crew call the burden of the red eye. Burden has two meanings. One meaning burden, responsibility. Another meaning of burden in this context, something difficult or unpleasant that you have to deal with or worry about. You have a problem, you have to take care of someone, and it is a persistent problem, then you say, it has become a burden. He has become a burden. Here, burden of what? The red eye flight. What does it mean? Imagine you work continuously for 3 or 4 days. It is not practically possible, or maybe 2 days. No sleep, then your eyes become red, reddish eyes, red eye flight. By dictating more rest time, how did the regulating authority, what are the changes it tried to introduce? Three things it tried to introduce. One, by dictating more rest time for pilots. First one, redefining night duty. Second one, even directing airlines to file regular fatigue reports. This is a very good initiative. One, rest to the pilots. Second one is what? Redefining night duty. Continuously night duty also not advisable. It takes a toll on one's health. And the third one, something very good in my opinion, even directing airlines to file regular fatigue reports. The airlines have to submit on a regular basis the fatigue reports. That's a wonderful idea. The rules were to have been implemented no later than June 1st. Here, important pattern. Word 2. Word 2 have been implemented. To have been implemented, passive voice. But before that, you have an important pattern. She is to write a letter. Many students ask me, so what is this sentence? What is this pattern? To write. She is to write. She is to write a letter. They are to work. It means, according to one agreement, they are supposed to work. According to one agreement, she is supposed to write a letter. Were to have been implemented no later than June 1st. These changes, these norms, the new norms were to be implemented on or before June 1st, but it did not happen. Because it did not happen, obviously editorial has to tell us reasons behind. Instead, a large section of the managements of India's airlines, most in private hands, only saw red. Here there's one idiom, see red. See red means become angry. Based on these new norms, what is the reaction of the airlines managements? Today, if you take the managements of India's airlines, most of them are in the private hands. Any industry, we have the public sector, the private sector. And when it comes to aviation industry, the major chunk or the lion's share is with the private sector in the hands of the private people. And these managements of India's airlines, most in private hands, only saw red. Means what? They became angry. Based on their reaction, what was the response of the DGCA? Subsequent to that, in a discord, it goes with music industry. When you listen to music because it is pleasant to listen to. Any disturbance you get irritated, and any disturbance in a harmonious relationship, that is known as discordant. And one more meaning, something that is not in agreement with something else. Not in agreement, not acceptable, not in harmony. In a discordant development this week, the DGCA quietly inked a copy of the revised civil aviation requirements. Quietly. You have to be careful with two words. They come under confusing words. Not too difficult. One is quite big. Means what? Very big. But the other word, quiet, It's a quiet place, calm, serene, placid, tranquil. All the words you have to recollect. Here, in a discordant development means something not acceptable. This week, the DGCA quietly inked a copy of the revised civil aviation requirements, which said that the scheduled air transport operators may continue to operate in compliance with. It is something like lowering the safety net, allowing the airlines to continue with more or less the same schedules. In compliance with, an important expression, comply with, compliance noun form, comply verb. The act of obeying a law or rule. Imagine there is a person, that person follows the rules, obeys the law, we say law abiding citizen. Comply, he complies with the laws. An important expression you have to remember. CAR section, here it talks about in compliance with CAR section 7 series J part 3 dated 24th April 2019 till approval of their respective scheme in compliance with this CAR. Old one 2019 they can continue with that till which time approval of their respective scheme in compliance with this CAR. It talks about something technical, but in a nutshell, it is allowing the airlines to continue with the past tradition. Read in perspective, an important expression. Here, read, read, read. You have to pronounce as it is in the past. Read in perspective means what? If you look at it carefully, it conveys some idea. What is that? But before I tell that, there's another important expression you have to know, that is read between the lines. Read between the lines means what? Understand what is not said but what is implied. Understand hidden information. When you read this is something important from the exam point of view, because whether it is banks or civils or SSC passage, if you take the passage, you have two types of information. One is explicit. These terms are very important. You have to know the meanings. The other one, implicit. Explicit information, implicit information. Any passage you have. Lower level of comprehension, whatever is in the passage, they ask a question, anyone can answer. Then we say it is a question based on explicit information. For example, based on this, they may ask which section deals with something. Simple option, section 7 deals with something. Anyone can answer. But sometimes what happens, the writer does not mention in the passage, but he conveys indirectly. That is known as implicit information, implied indirect. How do you get implied information? We use this. You have to read between the lines. Read between the lines means understand what is not said, understand what is implied. That's an important thing. Read in perspective. It means what? Read in perspective, it meant this. Airline economics had blanketed out safety. The whole thing tells us something, conveys something. What does it convey? What does it mean? There are two things over here. One is airline economics or the business. The other one, safety of pilots and passengers. This part says it meant this. Airline economics had blanketed out safety. Blanket out, a phrasal verb. It means to obscure or obstruct. They interfere with, overpower. In a way, overpower. Business overpowered safety. So what does it mean? In this context, it meant what? Airline economics or the business, airline business had blanketed out. It is in past perfect. Safety. They preferred airline economics to safety. What is important actually? Safety is important. What is the reason behind? Generally what happens, implicit means indirect. Very good, Divya. Generally, what happens, any industry, any industry has its own interests. To represent interests, they have the industry, that particular industry has lobbying groups or pressure groups. These lobbying groups or pressure groups, what they do, whenever the government brings out a new policy, if it is not in line with the industry, they put pressure on the government to make sure the new policy is not implemented or the new policy is withdrawn. This talks about that. As highlighted in the media, a Federation of Indian Airlines, a group of Indian airlines, had sought a postponement of the rules. They wanted, or the Federation wanted, postponement of the rules by pushing the line. When you request the government not to do something or to do something, you should have a valid reason. You have to justify. Here, by pushing the line means by presenting a particular thought or a particular reason. What is that? That the new norms would necessitate the hiring of between 15% to 25% more pilots over a period of 10 month period. They gave the reason for the postponement. They requested for postponement. There are two reasons. One reason, if at all they follow the rules, they have to recruit 15% to 25, between 15% to, where is this? 25% more pilots, and that recruitment takes about 10 months. One problem. And could even result in a nearly 20% cancellation of flights during peak summer season. Again, any industry, it has highs and lows. Whenever there's no business, we say dry period. A business slack means no business at all. When it comes to aviation industry, tourism industry, the peak business time summer, because summer vacation time, a lot of people fly, they make a lot of money. If at all they follow, they said, the federation said, it may result in 20% cancellation of flights during the peak season. That will definitely make a negative impact on the industry. But now the third party comes into picture. I said on the one hand the DGCA, and the second party the pilots and the crew, and the third party aviation experts. What do they say? But as a number of aviation experts point out, with the DGCA now willingly lowering a safety net, means they do not focus on safety, they focus more on economics. Pilots will continue to face fatigue related issues. They will continue to face the same old problems. Here there's one important phrase. There are two phrases, the number, a number. The number takes a singular verb. A number takes a plural verb. Between the two, the first one is very important. They have given in many exams. What is this the number, a number? The number takes a singular verb, a number takes a plural verb. In one exam, they give a sentence like, the number of students have gone up. Wrong. The number of students has gone up. Why has singular verb? The subject is the number, a phrase. This phrase takes a singular verb. This is the opinion of experts. Let us go to, this provides a background information related to aviation industry, the safety of the passengers and the pilots. In the early 1950s, recognizing the need to limit flight and duty hours for the purpose of safety, the International Civil Aviation Organization established guidelines. International Civil Aviation Organization established guidelines keeping in mind the safety of the pilots and passengers. Under its standards and recommended practices, there is one important word here, practices. Here it is a noun plural form. You have to recollect two words. One, practice, the other, practice. What is the difference? TISC is a verb form. TISC is a verb form. TICE is a noun form. Here, practice, singular noun, practices, plural noun. Under its standards and recommended practices, which required the operator to ensure that fatigue did not endanger operations. They wanted some sort of assurance. What is that assurance? Fatigue did not endanger operations. Endanger, an important word. To threaten, endanger, to put someone or something at risk or in dangers of being harmed, damaged, or destroyed. A simple word, threaten. This word endanger is an important word because today we talk about environment, damage of ecosystems, and a lot of environmental problems. When we talk about environmental problems, one of the problems, extinction of wildlife. And before extinction, they face another problem. What is that? Endangered. And we say endangered flora, endangered fauna, endangered species means a threatened, put in danger, they are in danger. And once a particular plant or animal is endangered, we don't try to conserve or preserve. Slowly, over a period of time, that particular species becomes extinct, means disappear from the planet Earth. Here, fatigue did not endanger operations. Fatigue should not make an impact on operations. That has to be taken care of. Since then, whenever you come across since for, they can be conjunctions, they can be prepositions. Whenever you come across since then, you have to think of two tenses. One present perfect tense, the other present perfect continuous tense. Here, the sentence is very important because in the exam, you may get a sentence like this under error location. Since then, the management, this is a subject of fatigue in the industry, especially in international operations, has evolved. What is the subject here? The management. Since then, since that time, 1950, early 1950s, the management has evolved. Has evolved is a present perfect because management is singular verb. Has evolved to include adoption of fatigue risk management systems. Based on the safety recommendations, they have evolved to include something. Include what? Fatigue risk management systems, which the DGCA is also planning. The same systems DGCA is planning. How do they plan to do that? By tapping into an important phrasal verb. Tap into, to manage to use something in a way that brings good results. You manage to use something in such a way that it brings good results, tap into. Generally, we use this tap into resources, tap into talent. In a way, you can think of the word harness. Tap into scientific principles of fatigue management and aviation scheduling principles. They have to use principles of fatigue management and aviation scheduling principles. The Indian aviation market. Now the editorial touches present scenario of Indian aviation industry. It has been growing, expanding. Based on that, the Indian aviation market in the backdrop of a pilot shortage, we have a pilot shortage, that is a backdrop, is in high growth mode. It has been expanding. How? And with increased flying flowing from an expanding route map domestically and internationally, there are cases of the well-being of flight crew facing much stress. What is happening? The industry is growing by leaps and bounds. Grow by leaps and bounds means grow rapidly. And for because of expanding route map domestically and internationally. When there's so much demand and they fly so many times, what happens? Shortage of pilots and cabin crew. With a limited number of pilots, with a limited number of cabin crew, they have to fly many a time. These people experience a lot of stress. That's what it talks about. Crew facing much stress. Ultra long haul flying. There is one word haul. There are two or three words. First, I'll read out. Fatigue means to get tired. That's what I started with. Long haul, forget about the word long. Haul means something that takes effort over a long time rather than just a few days, weeks. You try for something for a long time, it is called haul. Another meaning of haul, to pull something with a lot of force, drag something with a lot of force, and align, to be the same or similar or to agree with each other. Align with something, make sure they agree with each other. Ultra long haul flying, with its own ecosystem of issues, is on the rise too, with more wide body aircraft being inducted in India. A lot of changes in the aviation industry. Now, wide body aircraft being inducted in India. Induct means introduce, make part of something. Instead of taxiing back to holding point, taxiing back, going back to holding point, this is how the editorial ends. The DGCA needs to demonstrate an independence. Editorial opines that DGCA should be independent. It should not yield to the demands of the lobbying groups or pressure groups. The DGCA needs to demonstrate an independence where it will still ensure, main idea is being reiterated, it will still ensure regulatory norms are enforced. We started with the same thing. And also aligned with the highest standards of safety. They have to align with the highest standards of safety. Why? Here, for means reason, because flight crew and passengers deserve safer flying. Flight crew on the one hand, passengers on the other hand, both deserve a safer flying. That is the main objective of the whole thing. That's all about this editorial. Let us go to questions based to test your comprehension skill. What is try to read the first question, answer. What is a primary concern addressed in the editorial? What is a primary concern? Economic viability of airlines, safety issues related to fatigue among flight crews, competition among Indian airlines, environmental impact of aviation operations. What is this all about? Safety issues related to fatigue among flight crews, pilots and cabin crew. Yes, Divya, B is the answer. Very good. Go to question number 2. And before I wind up, I would like to tell you guys from Monday, I'm going to bring exercises. Earlier, I would do that. Now I'm bringing, of late, I have been bringing only exercises based on comprehension skill. From Monday, I'm going to bring exercises related to grammar, vocabulary, exam topics, and do attend the session. You will get enriched. This is the right time to start. In a way, they are like mini mocks. That will help in the long run. Go to question number 2. What was the response of the Directorate General of Civil Aviation (DGCA) to the proposed changes in flight duty time limitations? Immediate implementation without any modifications, quiet approval of airlines' requests, quiet approval of airlines, noun in the plural form, we have to use apostrophe after the letter S, request to continue operating under previous regulations. That's what the editorial talks about. Answer, second one is not, rejection is not the answer. Answer is, they yielded to the demands of the pressure groups. Answer is B. Good. Question number 3. What is the stance of the editorial regarding the opposition from airline managements? Airlines which are in the hands of the private parties, they opposed. What is the stand of the editorial regarding that? Supportive, citing the economic challenges faced by airlines. Indifferent, focusing solely on regulatory compliance. Critical, suggesting safety concerns are being overlooked for economic interests. What is the answer? C is the answer. They gave priority to economic issues rather than safety. They preferred airline economics to safety. Based on that, answer is C. No one has responded. Yes, C. Good. Question number 4. According to the editorial, what is the historical context of flight and duty hour limitations? Historical context. The editorial used one particular phrase, early 1950s, not 1980s. Where do you see established by the Indian government in the 21st century? Initiated by the International Civil Aviation Organization in the 1980s, introduced by airlines to improve operational efficiency, established by the International Civil Aviation Organization in the 1950s. Answer is D. Very good. I appreciate. 1950s, early 1950s. What does the editorial suggest regarding the future actions of the DGCA? Immediate enforcement of the proposed changes without further consultation, continuation of the status quo to avoid disruptions in airline operations, demonstration of independence in ensuring regulatory norms and safety standards. That's the main idea. Enforcement of regulatory norms. Make sure that the regulatory norms are enforced. What is the answer based on that? Demonstration of independence. The regulatory authority has to be independent, should not yield, should not give in, and make sure the regulatory norms are enforced. Answer is obviously C. Answer is C. That's all for today. Thanks for being with me till the fag end of the session. But Monday onwards, do remember I'm going to bring exercises based on exam topics, exam model. I may use a timer also. It is going to be something like a mini mock, and you have to answer that. Every day you do that, it helps in the long run. Mark my words. And I may spend about 50, 60 minutes also. Now it is only 36 minutes because I've done only the editorial analysis. But along with that, I'm going to bring practice questions based on exam topics. Do attend on Monday. Tomorrow, no session. Have a nice weekend. Thank you very much.